This is BBC World News with What a Waste.
Colombia, a country notorious as the world's cocaine capital. A country where, for decades, guerrilla kidnapping has been a daily threat for millions of people. But these days, Colombia is staking out a very different kind of reputation. The capital, Bogotá, is trying to reinvent itself as an environmentally friendly city.
A city should be for people. This is not so obvious because in the 20th century we made cities much more for cars than for people.
But can Bogotá challenge the supremacy of the car?
Mira,
Nestor Lasso is taking his daughters to school. He lives in one of the poorest and most dangerous parts of Bogotá. But even here, despite the poverty, life is looking up.
The cycle route is new and is very good for the neighborhood. Before there used to be sewage and it was full of rubbish and rats and it stank. Now we can go faster and more safely on the cycle route.
Getting into the city centre is also much easier these days. Bogotá's public transport system, the TransMilenio, has transformed Nestor's journey.
This way of transport has improved my life 80% because it's easier and quicker to get to places. Now I can go out with my family to the city and I feel more confident when I see how the transport is improving.
Buses and bicycle lanes. Small changes, but they are the first steps in a revolution which could radically improve life in the city. The man responsible is charismatic urban policy consultant Enrique Penalosa.
No large city in the world has ever solved its transport needs with cars.
Penalosa is a celebrity wherever he goes.
Hola, campeón. Señorita, ¿cómo están?
He was elected mayor in 1998 and was in charge of Bogotá for 4 years.
Hola, ¿qué hay?
He's famous for overhauling the city's public transport. Penalosa attempted to get back into power in 2008, but was beaten by a man with a rather different vision of how the city's public transport should evolve. When Penalosa was in power, he wanted to reduce the number of cars.
The only possible solution to mobility is public transport. And we need a city that is very friendly to people. There is a contradiction between a city that is very friendly to people and a city that is very friendly to cars.
Penalosa oversaw the inauguration of the TransMilenio, Bogotá's iconic public transport system. It's a network of 1,000 buses which speed across the city in their own exclusive lanes, while the rest of Bogotá's traffic looks on gridlocked. Penalosa regards it as one of his biggest triumphs.
We are in a TransMilenio bus. This system is carrying now 1.4 million passengers daily at similar speeds than metro rail systems, except that the cost is much less. The ticket costs 60 cents of a dollar and it has no subsidies whatsoever.
Penalosa wanted to create a cost-effective and affordable public transport system. But he had a secondary goal. To create such an efficient system, it would lure drivers out of their cars, reducing Bogotá's virtually permanent gridlock.
In most developing country cities, upper middle classes do not use public transport. TransMilenio has been successful in that 1 out of 5 passengers is a car owner.
I think it's convenient and fairly well planned, but it could be improved, mainly in peak times. Sometimes when I see the congestion, I think I would be stuck in that if it weren't for the TransMilenio, which is a much quicker way to get to work or go to study.
TransMilenio es fantástico.
I think the TransMilenio is fantastic because it transports a lot of people. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to get to work on time.
Tiempo que deben llegar.
The TransMilenio transports 23% of the population of Bogotá. 500 feeder buses bring people from outlying poorer districts to TransMilenio terminals. Still, old habits die hard. 8 years on, 75% of the city's public transport is still controlled by privately owned bus companies.
This is the way the whole public transport used to be in Bogotá. Individually owned buses, racing against each other, competing, dumping passengers, even dumping a mother with their children in the middle of the street. A lot of accidents, slow, and it's still like this in some streets. But this, for example, will be replaced by TransMilenio here in about 1 year.
It's not just the buses that cause congestion and pollution, even though only a tiny percentage of people in Bogotá own cars.
In Bogotá, only 15 out of every 100 people uses a car to go to work. And still we have tremendous traffic jams.
To tackle the problem, Penalosa introduced what is known in Bogotá as Pico y Placa. Rush hour license plate restrictions. They're still in place today.
Every car in Bogotá cannot be out in the street during peak hours 2 days per week. 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon. We do this restriction through the license plate numbers. The cars with license plates ending in 9 cannot be out during peak hours on Mondays and Thursdays, for example. This makes that 4 out of 10 cars in the city cannot be out in the street during peak hours.
The fine for breaking the law is $140, sufficiently steep to deter most drivers. More radical all-day car restrictions were ruled out because drivers would be tempted to buy second cars with different license plates to get around the ban.
I think it's a very good idea because it relieves congestion and normalizes traffic. It makes moving easier, getting from one place to another.
If I pay road taxes, I should be able to use the roads at any time.
I think we are all winning and it's good for society. There is less pollution. It's quicker and it's important that we take this step to slow down global warming.
To further encourage drivers onto other forms of transport, Bogotá also has an annual car-free day. But the truth is, all these restrictions have barely dented the gridlock, and urban policy experts like Penalosa know that. So he's come to London to compare notes with other urban planning experts.
In London, they have congestion problems too, and they have come up with a different solution to restrict car use.
London's solution to its traffic problems is the congestion charge. It was introduced in 2003 to ease pressure on the roads.
Congestion charge is like putting a red line around a part of the city. In the case of London, it's quite a large area of central London, and this red line has got a lot of cameras around it, and if you drive in and you're not a resident inside the red line, you have to pay either £8 or $16 to actually drive in for a whole day.
The original charge was £5 or $10. But it was increased because the authority responsible claimed it didn't deter enough motorists from entering the city centre. If the charge isn't paid within 48 hours, drivers face stiff fines.
The money actually which is raised by that tax, and it is a tax, is then used to improve public transport provision and to actually improve the quality of public space in the city.
In 2007, the congestion charge zone was expanded to cover a wider area of the city.
The congestion charge is, I think, an inspired choice. It's being now copied by maybe 20, 30 other cities around the world. It actually reduced the number of cars by 20% in the central areas. That means every traffic light, there are 2 less cars out of 10. That's a lot. That makes a big difference.
But not all Londoners agree.
4, 5, 6 times a day I have people getting out my taxi because I'm sitting in stationary traffic. So I'm actually losing business because of the state of London's traffic.
Congestion charge has been really good for London and has reduced traffic, particularly with cyclists. It's been an excellent thing.
I have to pay it every single day. I don't live in London, but I do work here, so I think it's a lot to be spending. I don't think it's really changed the way the traffic is.
I think the congestion charge is a really excellent idea, and I think it makes London a lot easier. I use buses a lot, and I find it much better.
There must be other ways of dealing with things, you know. I definitely think there must be other ways, because this certainly ain't working.
It took a lot of courage for the City of London to embrace what was at first a very unpopular charge, and then to experiment and learn by doing, to reinvest the money in buses. I think that this is the right kind of experimentation we need.
The basic idea behind London's congestion charge was to re-educate drivers, to get across the idea that access to the centre of the country's capital, an area under huge logistical demands, should not be taken for granted.
One can always quibble with the specific ways a congestion charge is done, like where you draw the boundaries of a city or what the price is, but the basic idea that the public roads should not be given away for free as a good, that it's not an entitlement, I think is absolutely the right way to think about it. The precious goods have to be seen as they are, that is, that they're precious, because if you don't have a price signal, then people will abuse them.
The future of London's congestion charge is currently under review, but no matter what happens, it seems highly likely that in the central zone at least, it will remain. Whether it's extended and how people pay is a much more open issue. For Enrique Penalosa, urban planner and the former mayor of Colombia's capital city, Bogotá, London has simply embraced what all modern cities are going to have to do in the future.
We restricted car use before London implemented the congestion charge. Our system is very radical, but I like better London's system of charging for car use because it achieves 2 ends. For one, it reduces car use, and on the other hand, it helps to get funds in order to make a better quality public transport. I would be certain that all developing country cities over the next few years will be using schemes similar to London.
Coming up, will Bogotá slip back into its old ways, or will it still move towards becoming a 21st century city? In part 2, Bogotá's new mayor has a very different vision to Penalosa. What will that mean in the battle against congestion and pollution in the city? Life in Colombia's capital, Bogotá. Riot police take on angry protesters marching against the country's paramilitaries. Colombia is still dealing with its historic problems. Guerrillas, paramilitaries, and of course, cocaine. Yet only streets from the protesters. Others are enjoying a new Colombia in one of Bogotá's new pedestrianized squares, oblivious to the violence. Bogotá is undergoing a revolution. It's becoming more environmentally friendly. Restrictions ban 40% of cars from the streets during rush hour. Instead, drivers are encouraged to use Bogotá's world-famous bus system, the TransMilenio, or to cycle. The man responsible is Bogotá's former mayor and urban planning consultant, Enrique Penalosa.
The same policies that are good to make a city more environmentally sustainable are the same that make a city more democratic, more socially equitable. Because if we make a city that moves by public transport, it's a city that's also good for the environment and it's also good for those with lower incomes.
Bogotá is a city of extremes. The poor are very poor. Many are migrants from the countryside who have come for work. They live in overcrowded homes in slums on the edge of the city. It's a world away from the city's wealthy. But in a radical move as mayor, Enrique Penalosa decided it was time to shake things up.
This is a 35-kilometer greenway which we built that links some of the poorest to some of the wealthiest part of the city. Tens of thousands of workers use it every day to go to work.
Canny entrepreneurs have been quick to spot the business potential. Another cycle path cuts a swathe through some of Bogotá's most deprived areas.
This is the Porvenir Promenade, a 23-kilometer pedestrian and bicycle-only road through some of the poorest areas of Bogotá. There is nothing like this anywhere in the world that I know. This constructs dignity. These people in these neighborhoods don't have cars, but never had infrastructure like this being built for them, for their transportation, for their recreation, for the community.
The money saved by building cycleways instead of roads is invested in local schools, libraries and parks.
It's been very good for the neighborhood. It makes it more lively and it looks nice and neater. And they have begun to pave other streets. It's good for the children because they can play in this area.
The city has also introduced what's called a ciclovia. Every Sunday, 120 kilometers of major highways across the city are shut to traffic and are transformed into a giant cycle path. It's become a staple of weekend life for people in Bogotá. Changes like these have dramatically improved life in the city for many. But getting around remains a major problem. Traffic is still regularly gridlocked. The reason is simple: not enough cash. And Bogotá is not a rich city. Each year it spends $330 million on public transport. Madrid, by comparison, a city of roughly the same size, spends $1.4 billion, almost 5 times as much. 8 years on, even Bogotá's much-admired TransMilenio has a growing number of critics: its passengers.
What can I say? It's difficult. There are a lot of people and not enough transport.
The system is not working due to the number of people living in Bogotá. It's not designed to transport a large number of people like the underground, even though it's meant to.
There is not enough investment in the different kinds of transport to cope with all the people.
What they need to do is sell fewer vehicles or increase the number of streets. The problem is Bogotá doesn't have that much space to create more streets.
It's crunch time for Bogotá. Major decisions still need to be taken on the future of the city's transport system. But the man making those decisions is not Enrique Penalosa. Instead, Samuel Moreno, the new mayor, is in charge of shaping Bogotá's future. He took office in January, and already it's clear he has his own ideas about how to deal with the city's congestion.
In Colombia, if you have a car, you have a high value of yourself and your family. People in Colombia would like to buy a house, would like to buy a car, would like to go to university. If you have those 3 things, your status is going to be very high. So yes, we have a problem because
many people are buying cars. But the problems are not the cars. The problem is that in Bogota we don't have enough ways, enough highways. So we have to work on building new infrastructure, building new highways, working on the metro system and on the railways.
Moreno was elected on his plans to build a metro system rather than expanding the TransMilenio. It will be expensive and take many years to complete. Critics argue it will take money away from other much-needed projects in the city.
The TransMilenio is a very good system, but the capacity almost is full. TransMilenio has a capacity around 40,000 people an hour. By the subway system, we could go as high as 60 or maybe even 80,000 people. So that we think that would be the final answer to the problem of our transport in Bogota.
It's too early to say how Moreno's choices will affect Bogotá in the coming years.
Buenas tardes, ¿cómo le va? Buenas tardes.
But Enrique Penalosa is not optimistic.
If we have a city crisscrossed by large highways, it's not a very friendly environment. And besides, no city in the world has ever solved its transportation problems building more or bigger roads.
For the moment, it seems Penalosa's vision of Bogotá as a city where motorists abandon their cars for buses and bicycles may itself be gridlocked, at least until the next election.